Everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach Thursday nights, Eastern time, 9 p.m. And I mean, Joe and I have said for the last several years now, it's like a big, for anybody who's doing what we're doing over here, both on the radio and here. Remember, follow us on Facebook. Facebook and YouTube till they take us down, of course, but X and Rumble, please, particularly X. We're going to try to build up our presence on X. They're serving it up. It's a big fat ribeye with a big fat baked potato. I would say cream spinach, but Joe and I are Italian, so there's a big glob of broccoli alba on there with sauteed with garlic and olive oil, some garlic bread on the side. It's a big fat dinner. It's like we don't even know what to choose from. But Joe Resinello, here's what I want to ask you: what the hell is this? Joe, I'm clueless.
It's a crazy Canadian getting caught up in the deep state. He's getting sucked in.
I mean, part of it looks like it could be real. Part of it looks like it's AI generated. You got the poor guy in the back; he's getting sucked back into it. What is that? They can't even call it an ocean because they're running it. They got flags, for heaven's sake. Joe, please explain that to me because
it's a deep state. It's a Canadian. He's getting sucked down. Nothing like seeing a Vietnamese Canadian get sucked into the deep state, Joe. We got some more people just for a second. So just for some laughs.
All right. For some laughs. Thanks for joining us here at the front line with Joe and John. Wait 10 seconds. 10 seconds. It goes to show you that in other parts of the world, I mean, it's just so strange sometimes, Joe, what people do. I really don't get it. And Joe, are you sure they're Canadians?
No, I think they're Vietnamese folks. It's probably the CCP coming after Vietnam.
Well, listen, I don't that, and then the CCP are the ones that sent in all that water. Those poor guys, they're running with flags, for heaven's sake, Joe Resinello.
They're running with nets, flags, the whole deal. Listen.
All right, listen. Let me ask you a question. You are so much more well in tune to what's going on in Canada more than I. What is this with another attack on the truckers? What is Trudeau doing now? Because nothing he does shocks me. Just like nothing the Democrat Party in America does.
The headline, and then we can kind of go back and forth.
Well, what is the headline?
Well, RCMP searches the ArriveCan contractor's home. His name is Kirsten Firth.
So Joe, for us Americans who don't know what RCMP is, what is that?
Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They're the guys that have like the big hats. They're on the horses. They got the red jackets on.
So they actually go into people's homes, like knock on the door, like the American FBI.
It's funny. As an American, I just thought they were like in the movies, but they're actually real. They're real.
All right.
So they basically, searched this dude's house. He's the second private citizen, the first in 111 years to be called to the bar and admonished. Let me just stop there. I invite everybody to watch this dude get admonished by the bar. It's ridiculous. I admonish you. Who cares? Who cares? Canada, you can't eat. And you're going to worry about this guy, Kirsten, whatever the hell his name is, and he's basically getting admonished. Well, here's the deal. Basically, the general auditor, Karen Hogan, says that GC Strategies received $19 million of approximately $60 million that the government spent on ArriveCan. So basically, it's just mismanagement of money. They're throwing this dude under the bus, and it's an absolute distraction. It's nothing more than a distraction to distract Canadians from the fact that they can't heat their house, they can't buy food, they can't put fuel in their car. And basically, he's taking the fall for the incompetency of the regime.
Yeah, but
Nothing more than that. Nothing more than that. And ultimately, most probably, nothing will come of it. It's just another stupid inquiry. And all you get is the sergeant at arms basically saying, I admonish you. And I say this, who cares?
right.
Who cares? The regime should get admonished because the regular man can't buy a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's what I think.
Well,
And
listen.
ultimately, maybe that guy should be running on the beach with the crazy people from Vietnam.
Yeah,
Maybe that's better.
he should,
Maybe
and getting barreled over by that water, and I don't want to say drowned. We're not cruel here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Hey, if you're watching this video, why don't you help us out? Share it on X, share it on Rumble, whatever you got to do. Now, Joe, one thing that Trudeau's not inept at, okay, it's spending Canadian tax people's money, okay. So you have as far as the Emergencies Act, like that's still. It's still in my brain. I can't get my head around it. But as far as the Emergencies Act, that costs Canadians about $73 million so far. $73 million. People can't have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, like you said, or heat their homes. And Canada gets cold. You got to heat your home. Okay. An oil-rich nation, a nation rich in natural resources. Okay. They're broke because of idiots like Trudeau, and he's spending $73 million of their money on the Emergencies Act because a bunch of guys that are truckers that wanted to protest, he wants to call them Nazis and a threat to national security. I hate Justin Trudeau. I got to be honest with you. I don't hate most people. I despise him.
More reason why they have to distract the Canadian people, why they're throwing this dude under the bus. Just pure optics. Also, Trudeau recently came out with the budget. Basically, he's making the Gen X people pay for the Gen Z people. I don't even know these little acronyms, XZ. But
I don't know what Gen I'm in. I don't know.
Again,
I'm not
what he's
sure
trying
what Gen
to
I'm
do,
in.
he's basically saying, like, I'm going to tax the very, very rich. It's just pure, typical, like, liberal, as if he's not very, very rich. And ultimately, it's basically to throw the Canadians a quote unquote bone. It's not going to change your lifestyle one iota, not one iota. It's not going to make your rent go down. It's not going to make the prices of food go down because he caused the inflation. He printed money that you didn't have ultimately, and he cut off your oil and gas. And that kills the supply chain. And that's why you can't eat. So ultimately, again, more optics with the budget. Him and Freeland taking pictures as if they care. Oh, we're going to tax the rich and give to the poor. Meanwhile, he's destroying you. He has destroyed you. And he's throwing this guy, Kirsten, under the bus. Ultimately, he should be thrown under the bus.
Well, not for nothing. The federal court in Canada basically ruled that that the spending, this $75 million, is quote unquote not justified. And that includes over $15 million for a judicial inquiry, $400,000, $500,000 in charter flights. You got a couple $1 million for hotel rooms for RCMP officers. Okay. I mean, it's the same old thing. Tax the people, take the money, spend it however you want, give it to your friends, because that's really what it is. That's what goes on in America. That's what goes on in Canada. None of this is shocking by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't know, Joe Resinello. Like, how would we even think in our mind? Now, we as Americans, our Canadian brothers and sisters, okay, how would we even think in our mind that a Justin Trudeau could get elected dog catcher at the end of the day, let alone prime minister, or that a Joe Biden, who can't even string a sentence together, can't even walk up a flight of stairs, okay, doesn't have an original thought in his head. He's basically the puppet for the third term of Barack Obama. How do they even have a shot at getting elected? Not like, let's say, it's a tight race against Trump or whatever. How does he even have a shot? Is my question. Let's keep it with Trudeau. Let's keep it with Trudeau.
It's a valid, thing to throw out there. Ultimately, it just shows that the deep state and the establishment run the show. And that democracy is a joke because, to your point, it's absurd, particularly Joe Biden. Like, no offense. It's absurd. He is completely out of it. He should be, in all honesty, in about 4 years, I don't wish him dead, but if he's not dead, he'll be sitting in a wheelchair in a hallway staring into space. This is who is running our country. Then you have Justin Trudeau. Obviously, he has his dad was, was the prime minister at one time. He's got the pedigree. He's a good looking guy, but he's done a masterful job of moving an agenda. Justin Trudeau did a great job of gaslighting, saying nothing. That's why people should tune him out, stop listening to him, turn it off. The news covers for him because they're in on it, just as the news is in on it in America. He has absolutely destroyed the middle class. He prosecuted truckers illegally. And when the courts, of course, after the fact, say that Justin Trudeau prosecuted the truckers illegally, he basically says, well, it seemed like the right thing to do at the time, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. Again, that should tell you that you don't live in a democracy, that the rule of law does not apply. It's all optics. They're moving an agenda forward, and he has moved it forward masterfully.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, because this is obviously something that's not by mistake. LifeSite News, which is based in Canada, okay? John Henry Weston runs LifeSite News. Why is it in their interest then, Joe Resinello? Nova Scotia just passed a law that allows the government to access private medical records. Now, not having read the entire story or knowing what the motivation is, I'm just going to go out on a limb to all those people watching us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. I think the motives are somewhat nefarious. Please, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's very scary. I'll tell you what, the nail on the coffin when we're dead, I mean dead to rights by the totalitarian regimes, is this: digital currency and that. When they have your medical records. Keep in mind, Canada controls your health care. Also, Canada has a MAID program. Suicide, legal, suicide. He's killing his poor. He's killing the mentally ill. And that door is going to get wider and wider and wider. When the government has access to your medical records, the government can make decisions that are outside of your doctor and your decisions. And that's dangerous. And then comes the next step and the final nail on the coffin when we turn into North Korea, and that is digital currency. That is why that is dangerous. I do not want the government, A, to control my health care, and B, it's none of their business what I have to say to my doctor or what is my concern about what I need to stay healthy and or the medicine that I take or the medicine I don't take.
Joe, but you're so wrong. You're so wrong. You want to know why? Because you're just a knucklehead American citizen who's not listening to Dr. Fauci, who has the audacity to think that you actually know something about the healthcare needs of yourself, your wife, and your family. Who are you to buck the narrative against the almighty, all-knowing, all-powerful Dr. Anthony Fauci and those like him, by the way, and those people at the CDC, National Institute for Health, World Health Organization? They know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. What pisses them off is that we know what they're doing too. Now, later on in the show, we're going to play a clip. This chick, I forgot who she is, but she's talking about the necessity of getting around the First Amendment because they don't want us talking about Justin Trudeau wanting access to your or Nova Scotia in this case. I'm sure it'll go nationwide, wanting access to your medical records. Or did you get the JAB, okay, at the time? Did you do that? Are you a CVID denier? I hate the fact that we even have to talk in code because YouTube might shut us down. I mean, I don't understand what it takes for people to wake up. Do you want to be treated like an animal? That's what I like to tell people, because they're treating you like an animal while they're telling you that you're free. You're not free. You're not free. They're patting you on the head. They give you some sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Tell you to go live in a 15-minute city. I tell you, life's going to be wonderful, and don't worry about it, because when you drop dead, there won't be any God to answer to. So you just enjoy yourself. We'll provide you all the sex and drugs you want, all the rock and roll. You'll live in a 15-minute city. You won't own anything. You'll just rent everything. And when the time comes, after you had all that fun, if it's worth it for us to keep you alive, we will. We'll pay the health bill. And if not, we'll give you a bottle of vodka. You could go and drop dead. Joe, I'm not joking. That's what they want. That's the world they envision. And I think I'm right about that.
It's very scary. And again, I think, COVID showed, I think, a lot of people the game plan. It also showed me. I mean, I changed my whole political mindset as a result of what I saw in the last 4 years. How the game is it's rigged, Joe. It's not made for the average person. It really isn't. And to be honest with you, it's been done in plain sight. It's been done in plain sight.
This hasn't been done under our noses. You're absolutely right. Right in front of us, we have allowed this to happen. Go ahead, Joe.
But ultimately, this is where, like, I say this a lot on the show because I just look at how countries have taken power back. Power is never given back, and they took power away from us in America and in Canada. It's not going to be given back. It has to be taken back, and they want the country divided. Listen, the issues are real, and there are real, like, disagreements. We'll just call them that. But ultimately, they're never going to be resolved because the people who control everything won't let them get resolved. That's
Right.
how it works in America. I can't speak for Canada, but that's what's been going on in America. They don't let them be resolved. They want the issues to be there. They have their pundits. They got Fox News. They have MSNBC. They have CNN. They basically divide the country. And people actually believe that these individuals are their advocates.
Right.
I mean, that's the saddest. I say this to my wife all the time.
You're talking about the politicians or the press?
Yes, like, I'm talking about the people, regular people. They actually think when they watch, like, Rachel Maddow and then they watch, like, Jesse Waters, that somehow that the politicians that they're exposing and or supporting are their advocates. They're not.
Right.
Yeah, and by the way, Jesse Waters makes a ton of money. Rachel Maddow makes a ton of money, and all the politicians are rich. They're not in the bucket that you're in. And yet we pit against each other. Yes, the issues are real. We could disagree on a lot of different things. However, they want you divided because you're easily controlled when you're
Well,
divided.
of
And
course. Joe,
people
let's
and
go-
all, yeah, and what I'm just trying to say is ultimately how we're going to get out of this, and then we could have a debate that's real.
the debate is a goal that we need to get to down the road, Joe.
That's
We don't have
right.
we don't have real debate right now. Right now, it has to be a matter of sheer political will. Do conservatives in this country, do conservatives and Republicans, do the conservatives in Canada, do you have the political will to turn this stuff around? And you have to have that, and then you could start having maybe some debate. Just want to throw a couple of shout outs out there. Joe, we have a great crowd tonight. It's growing every week. We got over 130 right now are watching across YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble. We got FJT, we got Bill, Natalie. So we have a lively chat room tonight. Janet, Marilyn, Menacing Muskrat. I love that one. Janet is here. Ace is here. Kaylee's here. Mary Pa the Great. So we got a really good crowd today. Rage Finder. I like that one. James. So we got a good crowd going on and a good conversation here at the front line with Joe and Joe. As always, Joe, let's keep it moving a little bit. You mind if we pivot to America? Now, all you Canadians out there, don't leave us now, okay? Because this all pertains. Anything's going on in America is going on in Canada and vice versa. So you want to talk about division, Joe? And dividing people? How about dividing a family? The Kennedy family just endorsed Biden against their own relative, against RFK. Now, last time I checked, there are many people, Joe Resinello, in my family that would not vote for me if I was running for president because they're liberal. Aside from the fact that they think I'm nuts, okay? But they're liberal and I'm conservative. RFK Jr. is a liberal, Joe. And he's not, and his liberalism is not good enough for the Kennedy clan, which, by the way, I don't know why this family, I can understand why they rose to prominence, both with grandpa and his election rigging, his stock manipulation, and his bootlegging. I get that, using his wealth to promote his family. I get the fact that the sons were a lot better than the father. Joe Kennedy Jr. was a lot better than his father. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Bobby Kennedy were a lot better than their old man. But they're going to try to say that Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy would be going for this type of nonsense. In other words, like, you got to listen to some of this crap Joe Resinello, that Kerry Kennedy, who is a nauseating human being, by the way. She's a nauseating human being. She has said, this is RFK Jr.'s sister. She invoked the legacy, this is according to Axios, of her slain father, Robert F. Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy. And then they have the audacity to mention Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy was a big clump of useless cells who imbibed alcohol and abused women. So to even mention Ted Kennedy with his brothers is ridiculous. But she basically turned. She's attacking Trump. She's attacking her own brother. She's supporting Biden. She's basically talking about his track record. Okay, they're beating up on RFK Jr. because they know that his being anywhere in the mix is a direct threat to Joe Biden. And they're basically just an apoplectic family who has no rudder whatsoever. And I don't even know why we listen to them. I don't even know why we listen to them.
Well, it's actually sad because, to be honest with you, he is a true Democrat. He's a Democrat. I'm not voting for RFK, but I do believe he respects and loves this country. And we just disagree on a lot of issues. I think he's a decent person. To be honest with you, when you listen to him, he believes what he speaks about, and he wants to basically, he said it, I want to give the country back to the people. That's a no-no. See, there is the no-no right there. And let's talk about the Kennedy family. They're above the fray. They're uber rich. Who cares who the president is? Obviously, there's some type of rift going on between RFK and the rest of his family. That's a shame. But the Democratic Party, they are terrified of RFK because he's not going to take votes away from Trump. Trump's votes are rock solid. Trump got a legitimate 76 million votes. People showing up to the polls and voting. And those 76 million, at least 70 are coming back. The Democrats need every single vote that they got and then some. And RFK is going to pull from them. You could tell by the liberal media outlets. They're attacking him. They don't want him to be on the ballot. They're giving him all types of trouble. And he is the variable they can't control. What can they control? They can control the mail-in ballots with the illegal immigrants that come into the country. Oh, now they're attacking that. That's conspiracy theory. I've read that this week because you sign a pledge when you register that says that you are a citizen and you don't have to show ID.
Joe, let me tell you what we say in Newark. Okay, what you're going to do with that pledge. Okay, you know what you're going to do with that pledge? Okay,
So,
I think you know where I was going with that.
But at the end of the day, they can control that because they made ballot harvesting legal. They made mail-in ballots legal, and you don't have to show ID when you register to vote. You sign a pledge. Who cares?
Right, that's what I say. Listen, they're playing a danger. Let me see if I could put this in a proper perspective, Joe Resinello. After 9/11, I remember saying to myself, if I was a terrorist, if I was one of these guys that wants to cause problems, okay, what I'm going to do is after 9/11, I'm going to start to commit random acts of violence. Like if I'm running a cell, let's say one of these terrorist cells, I'm going to start just shooting people randomly. In other words, and just because you want, and the reason why I'm saying this is this. Because 9/11, you that's it. That you took your best shot, and in a diabolical way, a diabolically genius way, you succeeded. You killed 3,000 Americans. You took down the World Trade Center. Big blow for your cause. Okay, all that stuff. But you're never going to be able to do that again. That's it. It was a one-shot deal. What they did in 2020, okay, what the Democrats did, it's a one-shot deal. The eyes are on them now, okay? Even under the surface, I mean, you look what Ron DeSantis did in Florida with just putting in a few basic election reform proposals, okay? And what did we find out? I told you this a million times at the front line with Joe and Joe, that we found out that Miami-Dade County and Broward County are actually red, okay? Because the illegals weren't allowed to vote. Now, you could do that nationwide, all right? And then we could trust our elections. I quite frankly don't. I don't care. YouTube, here, take me down. I don't care. All right. I don't care about YouTube, and I don't care about Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg cheated in 2020, takes $400 million, throws it into. You're going to tell me that Donald Trump didn't get one vote in Philadelphia? Are you going to really, you're going to really try to convince me of that? But leaving that aside, they're playing a dangerous game when they mess around with both the elections and the Constitution. Now, Governor Janet Mills of Maine has basically said she's going to allow a national popular vote bill to become law without her signature. Because in Maine, she could either sign the legislation and it becomes law, she could veto the legislation and it doesn't become law, or she could just let it go. And the legislature is the one that enacts that into law. Now, her excuse is that she's saying that Maine is going to vote with whatever the popular vote percentage is. So if the popular vote is for Biden, let's say, then Maine is going to vote for Biden. Here's the problem with that. You don't represent the people of America, Governor Mills. You represent the people of Maine. And if the people of Maine, under their power, under the Electoral College, vote for the Donald Trump, you're supposed to certify for Donald Trump. What are you going to say to the people of Maine who voted a way that you don't want them to vote? Oh, we're going to vote according to the national popular vote. No, Governor, you can't do that, you see. Now, again, maybe I'm just a naive ape, okay? But here's my thing. She's willing to forsake the people of her own state to thwart Donald Trump. Joe, I need a comment from you, brother.
Well, getting to that same conversation, she's one of 16 states and the District of Columbia that's willing to do that because it advantages Joe Biden. Once again, and to your point, it's not about what the people want. That is nothing more than manipulation. And
Right.
people, listen, you can hate Donald Trump, but this is no longer about Donald Trump. Joe Biden is not going to absolutely positively for one day campaign. He's not going to campaign. He's not going to debate. Their way to win is strategies like that.
Right.
Their way to win was to let in 7 million people and in some cases fly them to certain cities and basically ballot harvest, register them, drop the mail-in ballots into the bins, and that's the strategy. Period. End of story, Joe. They have nothing to say other than they hate Donald Trump. They have nothing to hang their hat on other than those strategies. And ultimately, what that should say to people is this. They're telling you who the president has to be. Your voice and your vote means nothing. By the way, allowing, and this is the globalist strategy, why is it that all the globalist countries all over Europe, all in Canada, US, are allowing immigrants, illegal immigrants, to come into their countries? Because it's a cheap way to influence an election. I give you a little bit, I give you a crumb, I let you come into the country, I don't help you otherwise. I basically, in many cases, at least in the United States, these people are frigging on the street. I work in New York City. I have seen families. I have never seen that in New York City. I've worked in New York City many, many years. Families begging on the sidewalk. You see that in third world nations. This is New York City, one of the richest cities in the world, the biggest city in America. You basically allow these people to come in. It costs you little to nothing. You basically are taking away the populist voice, the people who pay taxes. You're taking away their power, using them to leverage the oligarchs' power.
Right.
And ultimately, they do what they want to do against the will of the people. And this is what's happening in Canada. It's happening in Europe, and it's happening here. Oh, this is conspiracy. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Why?
Listen, I don't like what Carrie Lake did over the last week or so. She basically stabbed all the pro-life people that voted for her right in the back because now all of a sudden she recognizes a right to abortion. Don't ask me where that came from, okay? But here's the thing. We have the head of the Republican Party in Arizona on tape that she recorded, basically telling her you're a threat to the establishment. There's a lot of money in this for you. I'm paraphrasing. There's a lot of money in this for you. And she basically said no. Now, I'll credit her with that, okay? And I'm still disgusted with her. You can watch a video on X that I put up about her and Trump, by the way, who also stabbed us in the back a bit. But having said that, we know their game. they get to people who are in positions to sway these things. It happened in Georgia. It happened in some of these other states. This way they have plausible deniability. Well, it wasn't us that did it. The Republican did it. Right, because you got to him. Listen, you get a working class guy, Joe. Some of these guys that are in these offices, they don't have a lot of money. You throw $10 million in front of them and say there's $10 million in an account in the Cayman Islands. In other words, but you're going to do what we tell you to do. Just like they offered Carrie Lake. Okay, I don't know how much they offered her, but they basically offered her a substantial amount of money. All right. Then you wonder why these things happen. What? Bribery all of a sudden ended because this is America? Politicians in America walk on water. They're not susceptible to bribes and corruption. That's exactly what happened in 2020. Why else would Republican judges not want to look at the evidence? Why would Republican secretaries of state and Republican governors like Ducey here in Arizona, okay? Why wouldn't you want to at least look at the evidence and explore it? Why? Well, it's going to create civil unrest. What have you had since then? Civil unrest. Because you effing cheated and everybody knows you cheated. And you think we're just going to sit here and we're going to do nothing about it. Because like I said, Joe, if they don't cheat, first of all, you mentioned debate. They're never going to debate because if they did, they wouldn't get elected dog catcher. And it's the same with a straight up debate, a straight up election. Like you said, you got to show up. Paper. It's a paper ballot. You're going to show up. You're going to show ID. You're going to vote. There's going to be poll watchers there. So no shenanigans take place. Joe, if that happens, they'll lose New Jersey. If that happens, and they know it. You want to know why? And then I'm going to hand it over to you. This is not we just mentioned the Kennedys. John Kennedy was a liberal. Robert F. Kennedy, his brother, was a liberal. Okay. These people are insane that run the Democrat Party now. No way John F. Kennedy would have supported this party. No way Bobby Kennedy would have supported this party. Okay. These people are insane. Their ideas are insane, and they have to pull all this nonsense, Joe Restanello, because that's the only way they could get elected to office. I'm throwing it over to you.
No, the party would not even support Bill Clinton. If Bill Clinton ran
on his platform in the 90s, he loses.
The Democrats would not. That is where I've said, and we've said this from the very beginning, this is not the Democratic Party of your grandfather. And right. I'm not the only person who's saying that out there. It simply isn't. And RFK is a Democrat. He's just a Democrat. So was Howard Schultz. He was going to be the third party candidate. He got cancer. He ran Starbucks the last election. He's a Democrat, and he couldn't run in his own party because they didn't want him. I'll be honest with you, and this is the sick part. Too many people have political identity. They belong to the tribe. They can't see past that. And that's the sad reality. These people don't represent you. In fact, they're hurting you. They're hurting you. And it's not about Donald Trump anymore. It's about the rule of law.
It's about the fact that you have the audacity to not vote for an establishment candidate, whether they're Republican or not. It was okay that you voted for John McCain in their mind. It was okay that you voted for Mitt Romney, even though they attacked those guys relentlessly. Okay, John McCain, what a disgraziad turncoat he turned out to be. In other words, the left, who he became friends with because he hated Donald Trump so much, they called him a Nazi, they called him a fascist, they called him a racist. Same with Mitt Romney. Then Mitt Romney wants to get out of there, get out and march with Black Lives Matter. I am so regretful, Joe, that I voted for McCain and Romney. And you could throw W into that mix too, who I voted for twice. But where did you, Joe Restanello, where did you get the audacity to vote for Donald Trump? Who the hell do you think you are voting for your own interests? Well, how dare you? That's their attitude, Joe, and you know it.
Well, you know, it's sad. Donald Trump will do more for the average Democrat in America than
their own party.
Joe Biden. And that's the sad reality of this. Because people can't see past their tribe. They can't see past their hate. There is not even a doubt in my mind, not even a doubt in my mind that you will see immediately a difference in your checking account. Immediately. Yet they still won't do it because they can't see. This is the thing, Joe. I'll be honest with you. It's sad. I have never seen anything like it before in my entire life. I work with people that will complain about the violence on the streets of New York and in the subway. and then they'll vote for Joe Biden again.
And those people voted for Bill de Blasio and probably voted for Eric Adams.
And there's something wrong.
Right.
Because you know what it is? It's just tribal. It's a tribal mentality. You can't go against the tribe. And ultimately, this is their religion.
I think you're right about the tribal aspect, but I also, and I've said this on the show before, and I do credit E. Michael Jones because he's the one who says it over and over and over and over again. Sexual liberation is political control. This is the party of contraception, abortion, gay marriage, transgenderism, and people and even conservatives, Joe. We have to watch our conservative butts because conservatives, in the name of freedom, okay, are saying, well, yeah, of course somebody has a right to transition. Of course, if two men want to get married. Sean Hannity sent, what's his name? Guy Benson got married to his to his boyfriend, okay? And Sean Hannity sent a case of wine. And if Sean Hannity sending a case of wine, that's a pretty expensive case of wine. Sean Hannity doesn't care about gay marriage. He doesn't care about the real issues that are destroying America, Canada, Europe, all over the world. Who's not affected by this? Africa. Because you know what happens in Africa if you try to push this down their throat? I mean, go look. Me and my son, we joke all the time because there's a video going around with an African reporter, and he's interviewing this man or this woman who basically is a lesbian, but she's dressed like a man, and it's all confused. And the guy starts out the conversation. He presents the interview. He welcomes the audience to RSNL, and then he looks at his guest and he says, "So let me ask you, why are you gay?" I lose it because you want to know what there's so much truth and honesty in that question. Same with the president of Uganda when he was questioned by Christine Amanpour. In other words, where he says, "Listen, sodomy's disgusting. You're talking to me about human rights. You're talking about sodomy. It's disgusting." Okay, they're much more honest in Africa. But my larger point is, we've been sold this bill of goods. Part of it, because I agree with you on the tribalistic aspect of it, all right? But much of it has to do with the fact that people want their contraception. Lately, the conservatives even are hammering on IVF, because they know that's a winner for the Democrats because IVF staying legal, contraception, of course, abortion, gay marriage, all of it. Joe, these are the things that ruin a society. These are the things that ruin a culture. How else do you get people like Gavin Newsom into running the 5th largest economy in the world if it wasn't for the fact that he's just going to sell you the sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture? And guess what? That's what people want, Joe. That's what a lot of people want.
Well, Joe, you're right. And sadly, they do it at their own demise. And you don't have to look far. California has turned into a South American country. It's the very rich and the very poor. The middle class doesn't exist on the coast. It simply doesn't. And ultimately, as this regime continues to progress, that's what's going to happen across the whole entire country. That is what's going to happen across America. The middle class is going to disappear completely disappear. And this is, and people better wake up that this is why they vote against their own interests. You're voting against your own interests. It's like Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is selling the Canadian people and has been selling them a bad bill of goods, just like he just did with this new budget. Oh, he's going to tax the very rich and help out Gen Z.
Yeah.
What's he going to do to help you? You have to help yourself, but ultimately the government has to create a structure whereby you can create a situation that you could help yourself. You can't buy a house in Canada. The average person, it's no longer within your reach.
Well,
you cannot buy a house.
You could buy a house in America. In other words, I live in Scottsdale. We rent. Okay, so I'm in Scottsdale. Scottsdale's a wealthy town, Joe. Okay.
Oh, I know that.
But we rent. I can't buy a house here. Are you kidding me? But here's the thing: if you want an affordable house, you got to go out into the desert. You got to go out into the outskirts. Okay, around here. Same in New Jersey. Well, New Jersey's different because you can't own a house really anywhere except the Jersey Shore, and even there you can't own a house anymore. Used to be you had to go down there if you wanted to buy a home that was less expensive. All right, but now they've gotten to the shore also because the property values have gone up. Property values have gone up because people have moved there, and the taxes have gone up because state of New Jersey never met a tax it didn't like. But that's the thing. They want to push you around. They want to push you into different places. They want to push you into 15-minute cities. Okay. And if you're not, you're going to live in some East Bumble, you know what. Okay. And not for nothing. I mean, when it comes to the middle class, Joe, I'm going to be honest with you, and this is not false humility. If I had money, you wouldn't really know it. You really wouldn't. Okay. Would I drive a nicer car? Yeah. All right. Would I own a home or own my home and own a nicer home? Yeah, probably. Okay. But you wouldn't really know. You wouldn't say that guy's really rich. Joe, I'm around rich people all the time because I'm in the restaurant business. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. These people are super duper wealthy. They wear it on their sleeves. My larger point is, Joe, I like being in the middle class. I like it. I'm comfortable there. And I'm not blasting rich people. I've met a lot of wonderful rich people that I could have hours-long conversations with, okay? But at the end of the day, I like being in the middle class. They're my people. And if you're trying to destroy the middle class, when are people going to wake up and say, no, we're not going to let you do that, Barack Obama? Because that's who's really trying to do this.
But the thing is, they listen to the news. And that's why I don't listen to any of it. I don't listen to Fox. I don't listen to any of it because they're pitting us against each other, and basically the oligarchs are running us over. And that's what's happened in Canada. That's what's happening in America. Joe Biden, look at the inflation numbers. Look at the increase in cost. It's absurd. And that is a tax on the poor. The upper middle class and the rich can weather it. It doesn't, if bread goes up from $2.50 for a loaf of bread to $4.50, rich people still buy 4 loaves when they go shopping. Poor people don't. When milk goes up $1.50 a gallon, poor people who have children suffer. When gasoline goes up $1.25 a gallon, poor people, it's a tax on the poor.
Right.
But people don't connect it. And the sad part is many of these people vote for Joe Biden. They vote for Justin Trudeau. And I just say to myself, listen, I can excuse if you're rich and you want to vote for Justin Trudeau, you're worth a few million, you make $1 million a year, and you want to vote for him, we'll agree to disagree. But if you're barely making it and you support Justin Trudeau or you vote for Joe Biden, I'll be honest with you, you're crazy.
Oh,
And I don't know what else to say. I actually feel more sorry than I am mad at you. It's
Joe,
sad.
listen, I could justify on the level of sanity, and I don't like attacking people because they vote differently than me, and I'm not doing that, and I know that you're not doing that. But you do have to ask yourself, okay, can I defend my vote for Donald Trump twice? I can. Based on a number of different ideas. Forget about all that nonsense about Stormy Daniels. Forget about the fact that he's divorced. Just talking about policy issues, standing up against China, reworking NAFTA, looking out for the working class, real tax reform, even though he didn't get everything he wanted. Judges who are conservative and originalist judges. I could justify on that level of sanity saying, of course I voted for Donald Trump. Who am I supposed to vote for? And I've said that to liberals. Who would you like for me to vote for? Hillary Clinton? I don't think that somebody can actually justify voting for Joe Biden. Other than sexual liberation, other than abortion and things like that. I don't see why. Certainly don't see how any working person would. But Joe, here's the thing. Let's talk about information. Because that's where we are. We're in the information area, okay? On Twitter, on X, or excuse me, X is Twitter. On X, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble. If you're just joining us out there. Joe, by the way, we have a great crowd tonight. We've been consistently over 130, 140 just watching, and God bless you all. Thank you. Stick with us. We have about another 10 minutes because these are informative things. Joe, if there's not a free flow of information, there's going to be a problem in this country. And I mean like a violent problem. I'm saying I'm proposing that. I'm not, okay? If you start taking away people's First Amendment rights, Joe, what number am I holding up? 1. First Amendment rights, right to free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, okay, freedom of the press. If you start taking away these rights, people are going to start getting pretty angry, okay? They're already angry. They're going to get angrier, if you know what I'm talking about. Now, NPR, last time I checked, Joe, National Public Radio is public radio. That means they get tax money. That means you don't get to do what you want. You're not WABC in New York, okay? You're not WKRP in Cincinnati. Remember that show?
Better.
All right.
Better.
Right. Yeah. You're not WKRP Cincinnati, where you're privately owned. You are paid by taxpayer dollars. That means Catherine Mayor, whatever her name is, who I'm about to show our audience at the front line with Joe and Joe. No, you don't control. You don't control anything as far as speech because we have a First Amendment. So, Joe, here, this is Catherine Marr says the number one. This is, by the way, I want to give credit where it's due. This was posted on X by Chris Rufo. Anybody on X, I would recommend following Christopher F. Rufo. He's awesome. You get a lot of exclusive stuff from this guy. He's great. Catherine Mayer says the number one challenge in her fight against disinformation is the First Amendment in the United States, which makes it, quote, a little bit tricky to, quote, censor bad information and the influence peddlers that spread it. Here, have a listen.
Challenge here that we see and is, of course, the First Amendment in the United States is a fairly robust protection of rights, and that is a protection of rights both for platforms, which I actually think is very important, that platforms have those rights to be able to regulate what kind of content they want on their sites. But it also means that it is a little bit tricky to really address some of the real challenges of where does bad information come from and sort of the influence peddlers who have made a real market economy.
So here's the thing, Joe. Okay. It gets a little bit, see, the First Amendment for them gets a little bit tricky. You know what I'm saying, Joe? It's a little bit tricky. Okay. Because we got to get around that because Joe and Joe shouldn't have the right to say what they want. They're spreading misinformation and disinformation. And they're liars, even though they can't point out anything that we said is a lie. Okay. Opinions are not lies. You can disagree with them. But if something's my opinion, argue with me. Okay. But the fact is, we don't lie at the front line with Joe and Joe. We call them out for what they are. But see, Joe, it's disinformation, and you got that First Amendment, and it's very tricky. Why is it tricky, Catherine? Why is it tricky? It's tricky because it's a right that I have from God, which has been a big controversy lately because that one reporter, I believe it was on CNN, turns around, these white Christian nationalists, they actually believe their rights come from God. Well, where do they come from, sweetheart? Okay. So anyway, my point being is this. Of course, it's tricky. It's designed that way. It's designed so people like you, Catherine Mayer, whether you own Twitter or whether you own Facebook, you cannot censor free speech. You can't. And if you do, and I can't wait, I wish conservatives would actually do this, Joe, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. I wish the Ted Cruz's of the world and everybody else start stripping away the protections that social media companies have when they've decided to be publishers and editors, okay, and let them be exposed. This way, like you said, this way they could get sued and money moves the dial. But that's another conversation for another day. But Joe, I guess the First Amendment, it's a little tricky.
When the lie loses its power, you have to censor. You see, for years, they controlled the mainstream media, and they still do. They control the messaging, and the messaging controls the populace. So does the schools. That's why they have their agenda in the schools. That is a problem. However, now with social media, and you have voices like Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, who get millions and millions of views, and that is a problem, and that's why it's tricky. And then they come up with these buzzwords, and they gaslight you, and they say it's against democracy, and it's tricky, and it's all this other business. They basically use all, it's disinformation, it's hate speech, it's racism. All it is censorship. Nothing more than censorship. It's not against democracy. It's actually about democracy. In a democracy, if you don't have free speech, you don't have a democracy. And when the lie loses its power, you have to censor. That is why Rumble got thrown out of France. That is why Rumble got thrown out of Brazil. And as we speak, they're trying to get rid of Twitter in Brazil,
right?
Because they have to control the message,
and they control it by again. Our job here is to try to educate as best we can. For as much as we know. Perhaps those out there listening to us at the front line with Joe and Joe know this. Perhaps you don't. Remember something. The whole concept, the construct called hate speech was developed at the Harvard Critical Legal Studies Department and other Marxist law departments for ways to do what this woman just said, to get around the First Amendment. How do you get around the First Amendment? Well, you have the right to speak. Of course you do. except if you're spreading hate. Well, who determines what's hate? Okay. If you're black and I criticize the welfare system in America, and you turn around and say, well, you're a racist. Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't cut the mustard. All right. If you say something that you don't like about Catholic, if you say something about Catholic priests and the priestly the pre-sex abuse scandal over the last 50 years, I'm not going to try to shut you down. It happened. We own it. Okay. And we have to deal with it as Roman Catholics. But things, I'm not looking to shut you down. I'm not going to call you a hater. You might very well be, but I don't have the right to tell you can't say it. I have a right to respond to you. I have a right to call you out on the carpet. I have the right to call you and challenge you to debate me on a particular topic. But I don't have the right to tell the United States government in the name of hate speech to shut you down. And that's what they've done. That's what they've done with religion. That's what they've done with freedom of speech, is that we have to couch it a certain way. So you could practice your Catholic faith, but only to a degree, because if you practice your Catholic faith and actually believe it and say you believe it, well, now you're entering into areas of hate speech. And then they use that as a means by which they could censor you. So Representative Dan Goldman, who I really makes my stomach turn, he gets up there and he starts challenging Jim Jordan in the House last month, in the House of Representatives, and saying, I'm tired of hearing like this idea that the left doesn't concern ourselves with we don't value free speech, that we don't value the First Amendment. What we say is of course we value free speech. We're just concerned with misinformation and disinformation. Dan, wrong. Who's going to determine what that is, Dan? You still haven't made that clear. Is it going to be you? Because you're going to try to shut me down because you don't like what I say. That means that the freedom of speech that we have protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution, Joe, and I'm going to hand it over to you, is as close as you could get to absolute, except for the incitement of violence. Okay, and you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. But outside of that, Joe and Joe can say whatever the hell we want. So could Tucker Carlson. So could Joe Rogan. So could Russell Brand. And so could anybody else out there who wants to state their opinion on abortion and all these other issues. And you can't call me a hater. And in fact, if you do, I should be able to sue you and win. Joe, what do you say?
Well, it's interesting you said that, because who was that young lady who just sued Whoopi Goldberg for $10 million? Gaines.
Riley Gaines. Well, I didn't know that. Did she really?
She got 10 million out of Whoopi because she slandered her. And that's how basically we have to keep the media in check.
That's right.
We've talked about that. I'm not going to
Scuttle, Joe.
I'm not going to beat that down again, talking about Sullivan versus New York Times. That has to go. However, ultimately, you're going to see more of this. Ireland is also censoring. You can go in, I believe, the UK. They could go into your house if they believe your computer has some type of like information and or like you're spreading disinformation. They could actually come into your house. This is how they're trying to control people, because they know they have to. And this should open people's eyes. You see, this is the good thing that came out of the COVID and the social media era. It's showing people how we've been lied to, how we've been manipulated. And just because, to your point, Joe, you don't agree with somebody or what they're saying goes against your platform, that doesn't mean it's wrong. Do your own research. The research is out there. We can do our own research. I invite people to do it. Right. Turn off the mainstream media. Turn off Fox, turn off Sean Hannity. I don't listen to any of them. They have no original thoughts. All of it is simply just regurgitating talking points. They don't connect dots. The left does it too. All they do is try to rally their base, divide the country, and then nothing gets resolved. People have to understand what's going on. Look at facts, and then also go to common sense. Open up your refrigerator. Look at your checkbook. Look at your checkbook and stop lying to yourself.
Well, also ask yourself a question. If you're one of these blue-collar dads who has a son and you're voting for Joe Biden, do you really want your son to come home and say, Daddy, I think I'm a girl, and I want you to support me in that? That guy's going to say, who the hell told you that? My father would have given me a backhand and sent me to my room. Joe, here's the thing. Here's the thing, and then I'm going to want your comments because we're going to wrap it up soon, okay? Now, I want you all out there who are listening to us at the front line with Joe and Joe, who've been awesome tonight. Okay, best crowd we've had in a while, and it's only growing from here. Because I'm gonna give you an example of something, Joe, and then I want to play you a little bit of a clip. Jack Posobiec was on with Taylor Marshall, okay, and talking about really important things. But if you heard this, if you want to see the state of America, and then I'm going to play this clip. Bill Maher on his show said to Piers Morgan and a couple of others that were there, he goes, well, pro-life people are not really anti-women. They just believe, and I'm paraphrasing pretty close, they just believe that abortion is murder, which it kind of is, but I'm just okay with that because there's 8 billion people in the world.
And he said, and no one will care.
Right, and no one will care. We will.
Piers Morgan
God will.
Agrees with him.
Well,
he defers to him and he shakes his head. Yes, I agree.
Who's that?
Piers Morgan,
Morgan, who calls himself Catholic, who says I'm pro-choice.
He nods his head. He goes, "You don't agree with it? You don't disagree with it? You like he basically gets like he wants some affirmation. He gets it,
right?
And at least Bill Maher though is honest
about it. Again,
but I'm going to tell you this,
honestly,
not to go off on that tangent, but I just had a comment on it.
Go ahead, Joe.
We recently just spoke about that with Father Imperato. Joe, no one cares, and no one cares. We're at a state in America where somebody could say, this is murder and I'm for it and have no problem with it, and no one cares.
Right.
Joe, I'll be honest with you. If that doesn't step back from that for a minute and you just think about it, in Canada, you are allowing the state to take the lives of your poor, people who say they're depressed because they're a burden on society, and no one cares.
Right.
That's what happens when you take God out of a country. That's what happens when you take God out of your leadership and secular humanists run everything. They are dangerous people, and you're next because that door is going to get larger and larger and larger. And it has in a short period of time. If you think I'm lying to you, I got news for you. You're going to find out because it is going to grow as the state gets more burdened by financial difficulties. It's going to be very easy to make people disappear, like in Canada through the MAID program, like in Nova Scotia when they're looking at your medical records. It's going to get easier and easier because they don't believe in G-O-D.
Let's play this clip real quick. And everybody stick with us. We have a little bit more time, but here's the most important part of the show because, as Joe said, this is why we end up with the Justin Trudeaus and the Joe Bidens of the world and many, many other of their ilk. Have a listen to this.
Moses, I put before you today life and death. And he says, choose life. So there's a binary decision for every human person. It was given to Adam. It was given to Eve. It's given to us. And in the West, in the United States of America, in Europe, I guess you can consider Australia as part of the West because it's part of the Western Christian tradition. People more and more are choosing a culture of death. They're choosing chaos and not logos. They're choosing darkness and not light, and that has cultural ramifications. We wonder why everything is in decay and is in chaos, and that's because God is not at the center of our culture, our civilization, our laws, our families, etc. And so that's going to create a vacuum, and Satan will fill that vacuum. And we're seeing that right now all over the world. So much so, we talked about this. Saying something as innocent as Christ is king, you get attacked for that. I was talking to Steve Bannon about that recently on his show. He's like, how do we get to the point where saying Christ is king is now hate speech?
Okay, Taylor Marshall there is making our point. How are we at that point? You see, it's called hate speech. If you say Christ is king, and we're just using that as an example, and that's called hate speech, Joe, I hate to think what real hate speech is then. So I think I think that Jack Posobiec, Taylor Marshall, I think, they're making all the sense in the world. We said this at the front line with Joe and Joe. I think we were fairly prophetic about this. Okay. When we said, we did an interview with Father Stephen Imbarrato, which is on X, on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. And you want to see the state of abortion right now? Go watch that interview. We did it this morning and we posted it immediately. Okay. Joe, here's the difference between Roe versus Wade under that regime and now under Dobbs, where abortion goes back to the states. Joe, now we're choosing abortion along with all of its other attendant features. Now we're choosing it. God help us, Joe. God help us, because before we didn't choose it. It was imposed on America by the Supreme Court, by Roe versus Wade. Now we're choosing it. How disgusting.
Joe, ultimately, the secular humanists in Canada and the US and in Australia and in Europe are trying to legislate morality. This has been tried and it will fail, as it has failed in the past. You cannot legislate morality. Morality is learned in families, and the family union is destroyed. It is absolutely demolished. 40% of our children are born out of wedlock, and over half the marriages in America end in divorce. It has resulted in wounded children, in depression, in suicide, and in mental illness. And until we get the family right, and until we find our North Star, and we're not pushing a theocracy, I'm not going to lie to you. I am Catholic and I believe everything the Catholic Church teaches, but we live in a pluralistic society, and God does not impose. God proposes. And
can I interject one thing there? In
Sure.
a pluralistic society, disparate groups of people, Joe, could still come together and recognize what's insane and what's not,
That's
even
exactly-
in a pluralistic society.
And that is what I'm getting at. Basically, listen, I am not going to impose my religion on anybody, but at the end of the day, there are some common threads that benefit the society, like marriage between a man and a woman, like strong families, like allowing people to practice their faith in the public square, which helps them to get grounded, to have common sense, and to treat people like they want to be treated. And that's not going on. And you cannot legislate morality. And that is what Justin Trudeau is trying to do. And that is what Joe Biden is trying to do. And it does not work. And society has gotten worse under their leadership. Be honest with yourself. Simply be honest with yourself, because it has. And it's not going to get better under their leadership or people like them. We have to get back to first principles and basics. And I'm not imposing my religion on anyone. But what I am saying is this: religion gives people a North Star, and families, strong families, build a healthy society. We have neither, and that's why we're in the situation we are in, and it's only going to get worse.
Listen, that's a perfect place to end it, Joe. I wish we were ending on a positive note. Maybe we will in the future. We had a little fun here tonight, but like you said, I don't see it getting better anytime soon. Hopefully God surprises us.
Joe, just for laughs, put on the ocean just one more time.
No, listen. For those of you joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, this is how we started the show, with these insane people. Watch this clip. Poor guy at the end, he gets sucked back. Joe, if that was on the Jersey Shore, they would have been hitting those guys with baseball bats. So we want to thank you out there. Please do us a favor, from our hearts. We love you all for watching us, sticking with us. We have some old friends in the chat tonight, some new friends, and we really appreciate your support. We had our best show viewing wise. We'll see how it picks up afterwards. But what could really help us pick it up is if you're watching on Rumble, on X, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Please share this video. Like it. Subscribe to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. All right. And please share it. Okay. We think we're having fun over here. We're having a good conversation. We play a couple good clips. We're just the everyman. There's nothing special about Joe and I. We have big mouths, but that was given to us by God. But we see clearly. Okay. We see the problems clearly, and we like to talk about them. And we're not interested in shutting you down. And we're going to fight against anybody who's going to try to shut you down or try to shut us down. And one thing we'll do that they won't do, Joe Resinello, we'll call them to the carpet. You disagree with us? You come right on the show. You come right on the show if you disagree with us. We don't care who you are, what position of power you're in. If you disagree with Joe and I on anything we've said, you come on the show and we'll defend everything we said. And that's a promise, because you're afraid of us, but we're not afraid of you. Thanks once again. Remember, we go live Thursday nights, every Thursday night, unless something really bad happens, which God willing it won't. Every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and we're all across social media. One more time, thank you. One more time, please share this video. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere.